I've taken over 7,000 sales calls and I've closed over $8 million in deals. And after spending over $50,000 on sales training personally, what I learned that actually helped me break through to the next level shattered everything that I was taught and everything I thought I knew about sales. The secret to becoming a top 0.1% closer, one who actually closes 70, 80, and 90% of prospects they talk to, has absolutely nothing to do with better scripts, fancy objection handling techniques, or just working more hours. And I know that's going to be confusing to most salespeople because people just think sales is just about finding the right words to say. But what I'm going to show you is why selling to somebody's identity is the only way to join the elite 0.1% of closers who make $40,000 per month in commissions consistently. That's the key word there, consistent. In fact, I'm going to prove to you why everything you've been taught about sales up until this point has been keeping you stuck in mediocrity. And if you stick with me till the end, I'll show you the exact 6-step psychological framework that separates the top 0.1% of closers from everyone else and give you a real life sales call example where I use these steps to go ahead and close a client. Now, before I break this down, let me show you exactly what happens when you master identity-based selling. We have Peter here who went from $15,000 per month to $47,000 per month selling to real estate agents, and he did that within a 3-month timeline. Now, real estate agents are some of the most difficult prospects on earth. If you ever sold them, you know. But here's the crazy thing. He's selling the exact same thing, same sales training program, same price, same features, same everything. He just changed how he sold. James hit $40,000 per month, and he was able to travel through Europe and really live his best life and have the freedom he looked for. Owen went from $4,000 to $10,000 per month in commissions in just 30 days, and Jonathan went from $8,000 per month to $31,000 per month helping gym owners. And the only reason I'm actually showing you this is to give you undeniable proof of what I'm about to tell you works. So I have students who have gone from complete beginners to over $20,000 per month consistently in under 90 days. Not because they found some magical offer or got lucky with warm traffic, but because they learned how to sell to identity instead of surface level problems. What I'm going to show you is exactly how they did it, because the difference between a $5,000 per month closer and a $50,000 per month closer isn't talent or luck or even experience. It's about understanding human psychology at the deepest level. Because here's the brutal truth that no sales trainer wants to admit. 99% of closers are stuck in what I call the surface level trap. They're asking surface level questions like, what's your biggest challenge? What are your goals? And what's preventing you from getting there? And believe it or not, if you ask surface level questions, you get surface level answers. And if you get surface level answers, you get surface level commitment. But here's what they don't understand. They're not talking to the real person. Everyone that you're talking to on a sales call, if you're surface level, you're talking to the representative. Every prospect you get on a call with is wearing a mask. And if you accept what they're telling you at face value, you'll never get what's really driving them. Most closers think that a sales world is linear. More calls equals more sales. Better scripts equals better results. They think if they just find the right objection handling techniques or the perfect closing questions, they'll magically start closing more deals. But the top 0.1% understands something completely different. They understand that sales isn't about convincing someone to buy something, it's about actually helping someone become someone. Let me show you exactly what I mean by that. And if you want this document, just go ahead and check out the description down below. So if you take a look at the two pictures here, one is going to be the picture of the brain that will break down again, like how the brain actually works and how to tap into the deepest part of the brain. The other is going to be the pyramid of leverage in NLP. Okay, so let's break down both of them. So understand there are 3 parts of the brain. We have the neocortex, which is going to be the logical side of the brain. This is where you make all your logical decisions. And a lot of salespeople get stuck actually trying to sell to this part of the brain. Again, we're making logical arguments, and for some people that will work. For the majority of people, it's not going to work. Okay. The next step is the mammalian brain. Okay. The mammal part of the brain. This is where all your emotions come from. And if you've ever heard people make decisions based off of emotion, right? And then they justify with logic, this is correct. Okay. So if you're able to actually tap into emotion, you are going to be able to get people to move on a more frequent basis. But there's another step down below it, which is the reptilian brain. This is instincts. So you have to understand when you talk about the reptiles and the reptilian side of the brain is they do things because they are something. Okay. So if you're able to actually tap into who people are, it really is going to cause an instant reaction for them to want to justify who they are and why they make decisions the way that they do. So the closer you're able to get to the stem, the more persuasive you're going to be. Okay. The neocortex, you're going to be talking more about logic. Mammalian, you're going to be talking more about the actual emotion. But if we get to the deepest root, that's when we actually talk about the identity of who they are and tap into their instincts, because if they need to live up to the identity of who they see themselves are, everything else falls into play. And that's when we come to the NLP framework here, okay? The higher up you go on the pyramid, the more leverage you have and the more likely somebody is going to take an action, okay? Most people are going to be asking questions and really trying to drive pain and get people to change around behaviors. What are they actually doing? Like, hey, what are you doing to get this? Why isn't it working? Skills or competencies, like, hey, what do you feel like is missing? Okay, what if you never actually get the skills? Now, some closers who are actually, a bit better, they'll even focus on beliefs, right? Like what's causing you and what's holding you back and what's preventing you and really being able to get to beliefs. But what they're missing is the highest leverage is identity. Now, why is it the highest leverage? Because if you're able to shift someone's identity, shift how they actually view themselves, their beliefs, skills, behaviors, and environment all have to align with their identity. Okay. So if we break it down even a little bit more, just understand how the brain works. Okay. Because most closers, they try to persuade on like the primate level where it's just features, benefits, but more advanced closers are going to tap into the emotions like we said. But the identity is what we are able to do, get to the closest root stem of the reptilian brain. Okay. Now, the key insight you need to understand is every single person that you have a conversation with has a picture in their mind of who they are now versus who they want to become. That gap, that's where the sale actually lives. That's where urgency comes from, because probably the most persuasive person in the world right now is going to be Tony Robbins. And what he says is the strongest force in human personality is the need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. So if we help someone see that buying whatever it is you're selling is consistent with who they want to become, the sales just happen. Okay. So let's break down how we actually do it. Because it's one thing to know, like, okay, understand a little bit around the psychology. It's another thing to actually do it. So let's actually break down the framework of how this works. Okay. So when you're on a conversation, the step one we need to do is we need to understand how they currently view themselves. So instead of asking basic questions like, hey, what's your biggest challenge? You ask questions that are going to reveal how they see themselves right now. Okay. So here are some of the questions that I use. And again, they're in no particular order. Depending on what you sell is going to shift how you would go about doing this. Okay. So a question like, help me understand, like, where does that drive come from to change your situation? Or why is that so important to you? Okay. Asking somebody where something comes from, typically it's going to be something that's deep rooted and something from their childhood. Okay. So this allows you to get underneath where their drives are, right? Instead of beliefs, we're really getting to the identity. We have more leverage. Okay. Another question. Lots of people are fine staying where they're at. Why are you not okay with that? So what I'm getting them to do there, if you ask a question like that, is you're separating how they view themselves from how other people act. If other people are fine, that's an identity thing. Like they identify as just being fine, but they're not. Like, why are you not okay with that? Okay. And a question I'll always ask is when I'm digging into somebody's pain, well, are you okay staying that same person who has to deal with this? Why not? Again, these questions are going to bypass their logical mind and get straight to their self-perception. If you know how somebody views themselves, this is where you're going to have more leverage on being able to shift it. Okay. Now, after we really understand their current identity, their current pain, what's going on, we need to find their limitation, their limiting belief. Step number 2 is we need to find their limiting belief. Understand most people have stories on why they don't have what they want, but they're just that. They're stories. They're not real, and we can't buy into them. So it's your job as a leader to identify what these stories are. That way we can attach them to their current identity, like how they view themselves. So we can drive a wedge, make their current identity so painful that they really need to make sure they start to step into the person who they need to be to get their outcomes. Okay. So here's how we actually do it. So understand past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So you need to ask them, what's actually prevented you from solving this problem in the past, especially if they've had pain. If they've had pain for months, for years, what's prevented them from actually going out and finding a solution. Now, sometimes people will just tell you what the issue is, okay? But other times they're going to tell you an excuse. Something like time, money, research, I didn't know was a thing. These are all stories that they're telling themselves of why they don't have what they want. Again, they're not real. So we need to be able to sideswipe it and then get to what's actually holding them back, which is an internal belief. So you ask like, hey, what's preventing you internally? Internally is a key word from finding the money, from finding the time, for looking for a solution. You need to get to a real belief, okay? Once you get to a real belief, that's when you're able to attach an actual cost to it, okay? So that brings us to step 3. We need to bridge into an identity gap, okay? This is where most people actually fail. They focus on the business gap, the money gap, the difference between like where they are now and really where they want to be financially. But you need to focus on the identity gap, okay? The difference between who they are now and who they need to become, okay? So here's how you go ahead, and this is how you do it, is when you go ahead and you find a limiting belief, you attach a cost to it. Like, hey, this is what's been holding us back. Then you want to bridge into identity. Now, this is something that I'm going to do every single time. There's other different ways to bridge into it, but this is the one that for most sales circumstances works the best. I'm going to say something like this. And the reason why I ask is I can give somebody the perfect diet plan in the world, but if they don't have the right mentality to actually use it, what type of results do they get? 0, right? So yes, it's about skills, but it's also about being a better person. Because if you're that person who's making $10,000 per month and like has that level of freedom we're looking for, like I'm telling you right now, like you walk that, right? You hold yourself to a different standard. Like, wouldn't you agree? Okay. Now, when I bridge into it, I want to make sure I say it with confidence, but I'm checking for agreement. I need to get buy-in as I'm going through. And at this point, I'm no longer talking about business, their job. I'm talking about them as a person. And that's when we can have a real conversation. Okay. Step 4, once we actually are able to bridge into identity, we get buy-in, we need to widen the gap. The person who they are right now needs to hurt. And I need to get them to admit that who they are now hurts so they can actually step into the person who they need to be. Okay? So you say, like, once we bridge into identity, it's like, hey, once we step into this person, right, we walk that. But right now, we're current situation person. Is that right? Customize it to the person you're talking about. For example, if you're talking to somebody who is like a biz up, they're stuck in a job and they don't have the time, it's just like, well, right now, we're the person who's stuck in our job, not making the money we need, and doesn't have control of our time. Is that right? So I have to ask, are you okay staying that person? Because if you are, I'm the first one to tell you to stay where you're at. At this point, you're pushing back. Why do you push back? Is because if you push back, they're going to take a step forward. This is what we need. We need them to take a step forward. And when they take a step forward, we need to push back even a little bit more and ask them why not. Okay? It's not just, it's not enough just to get them like, oh no, I'm not okay staying where I'm at. It's not enough just to get them to say, oh no, I'm not okay staying where I'm at. We need to get the deeper why behind it. Then from there, again, we want to dive a little bit deeper. And naturally, as we grow into someone, we have to let things die off. So what do you need to let go of in order to become that future identity person? Okay. You want beliefs out of them. You want characteristics. And oftentimes you can actually lead them to specific things like, well, do you feel like you need to let go of that fear? Why? Okay. Get them to justify it. We need to get them to take ownership of the person who they are and need to get them to take ownership of why they need to let things go. Okay. So step 5 is we need to make the identity shift urgent. Okay. How do we create urgency? Okay. We do it through consequences. The consequences of them staying the person who they are now, not the business consequences, right? Like the basic bitch consequences, the personal consequence, if they stay the person who they are. Okay. So I hate to ask, if we stay the same person we are today in 2 years, telling ourselves the same stories, still making the same decisions the same way, like what does our life look like? Okay. What does that do to your confidence? What does that do to how your family sees you? What does that do to how you see yourself? Now, again, you don't need to ask all these questions. You want to customize it to the person you're talking to, but it gets to the real root of the issue. It's not the consequences if their circumstances stay the same. It's the consequences if they stay the same person and as a result, their circumstances stay the same. So if you're able to get them to admit they can't stay the same person, everything else falls in line. And then the last step Step 6 is you need to position yourself as an identity bridge. Okay. So now we got them to admit that there is a gap between who they are and who they want to be. And guess who needs to fill that gap? You. Okay. So don't just let the, identity gap, don't just leave it there. You need to become the bridge. You position yourself, your program, not as a business solution, but an identity transformation tool. Okay. The program isn't just about making more money. It's about becoming the type of person who naturally makes more money. It's about shifting from someone who hopes things work out to someone who makes things work out. So let me walk you through a real example so you can see exactly how this works in practice. Now, I had a prospect, let's call him Mike. So he owned a marketing agency. He was making about $15,000 per month, and he wanted to get to $50,000 per month, right? Pretty reasonable goals. Now, most closers are going to focus on business. Like, what's stopping you from scaling? Better systems, more team members, higher close rate, just the basic stuff. But through my questioning, I went deeper. So Mike wasn't really trying to scale his business. He was trying to prove that he wasn't a failure that his father said he was. The business was just a vehicle. So instead of talking about sales strategies and revenue goals, I talked about the identity transformation, right? Like I asked him, what do you need to let go of in order to become that $50,000 per month business owner, like we had talked about before? And he admitted to me, but more importantly, he admitted to himself, it was the fear of failure. And if he held on to it, he would never be able to take the risk necessary to grow his business. And really helping somebody come to that realization, like it did for Mike, like it hit him like a truck. Because we weren't talking about his business anymore. We're talking about who he was as a person. And as you might imagine, the close was effortless because he wasn't buying just a sales training program. He was buying an identity transformation. He was buying a chance to become the person he'd always wanted to be. And here's the beautiful part. When you sell to identity, objections rarely come up because they're not deciding whether to buy your product or not buy your product. They're deciding on the person who they want to be. And if objections do come up, it's much easier to actually overcome them because the decision on who they need to be is so much easier. And not only do you sell much more because we're actually getting them to step into the identity of who they need to be, they get much better results because we're able to help them at a much higher level. And at the end of the day, that's what's truly important. And with that, what we can dive into is why, and again, this is after spending over $50,000 on sales training and trying each and every method, why every other method that I've found that I've used, that I've trained in just comes up short. Okay, let's run through each one of them. Number one is script-based selling. Okay, this is the robot trap. When you follow a script, you sound like every other salesperson. Like a prospect immediately puts you in the salesperson box. Oftentimes, when you're given a script, because how many people do you know who uses like an NEPQ script? They don't truly understand it on a deep level and they don't actually customize it to the people who they're talking to. So they treat scripts like a one size fits all and they can't adapt to the unique identity drivers of each prospect. And you're just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And yes, following each of these techniques I'm going to talk about might get you to 30% close rate. But when we're talking about getting to 90% close rate, you need to be able to go deeper. Okay. The next one, and what I see a lot, is just feature and benefit selling. We're just trying to logic trap people into buying our shit. This is what 90% of closers do. Hey, here are the features, here are the benefits. Our program includes this, but you're competing on logic and logic doesn't drive decisions. Someone else will always have better features or lower prices. People don't buy on features, they buy on feelings and actual identity shifts. Okay. Now, pain-based selling. This is better than the previous ones, but it's still surface level. You're talking about business pains or even personal pains, but pain in itself is surface level. People live with pain every day. They adapt. But you actually getting them to identify their pain at a personal identity level, that's what becomes unbearable. That's what really drives people. They need to be consistent with how they view themselves. Okay. That's what drives action. Okay. Just objection handling. Okay, this is a big one that I see too. Most sales trainers just focus on objection handling. Hey, when they say this, you say this. Basically, it's just playing defense, and you're just hoping and praying you can bully about 30% of the people you're talking to into buying. And again, this is really good if you want to become a 30% closer, but if you want to become a 90% closer, you need to sell to identity correctly because objections rarely come up, and if they do, it's so much easier to overcome. Okay? Now, the pressure and urgency trap. This is why I see a lot on Sales Coach. You think some of this stuff would go away, but you'd be surprised after listening to thousands of calls and training tons of reps. It really doesn't. A lot of closers try to create urgency through bullshit scarcity. The price is going up. This price is only going to be available today. We like to work with action takers. So if we can make a decision on today's call, we'll give you $2,000 discount. It's all bullshit, and people know it's bullshit. So what it does is it breaks the trust that you had built up with that prospect. Okay. When you get to the person's identity, it's an internal urgency that you need to create. And it really comes down to how much longer do they want to be the person who they are now instead of the person who they want to become. That's where real urgency is instead of this bullshit price thing. Okay. So let's dive into why it actually works. So there's a big few things that is working in our favor when we're talking about psychology. Okay. Number one is going to be the consistency principle. Humans have a deep psychological need to stay consistent with their self-image. When someone sees themselves as a successful entrepreneur, they'll act like it. When they see themselves as someone who's stuck, they'll act stuck. Your job is to get them to actually see themselves differently and step into the identity of the person who they need to be. And it comes back to that Tony Robbins quote that I mentioned earlier. The strongest force is people's need to stay consistent with how we define ourselves. Okay? The next one is the identity action loop. Here's something that most people don't understand. Your identity and your actions are in a consistent feedback loop. Your actions reinforce your identity, and your identity drives your actions. Most people try to change their actions first. I need to work harder, make more calls, follow up more, but that's backwards. When you change somebody's identity first, the actions become automatic. It's natural. And people think it takes a long time to shift or change somebody's identity. But if you do it right, even with yourself, it happens in an instant. That's what we focus on, okay? The next one is future self visualization. The most powerful part of identity-based selling is to help someone see their future clearly, not just their future business, or their future income, but their future identity. Most people never actually sit down and understand what their goals are. Okay, or who they need to become, or all these different things that we're talking about. So when you're able to get them to actually clearly see that through your questions and through your leadership, okay, they're not buying a program at the end, they're just becoming the person who they need to be. It's a seamless conversation, okay? And then when we're talking about identity level pain, the pain of staying the same, okay, is so much greater when we're talking about on identity level change. Rather than focus on financial struggles, business problems, understand the people you've talked to, oftentimes they've spent a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Listen to calls where people spent 15 years being in a certain type of pain. Okay. Identity pain is much more powerful. It's internal and nobody thinks about it. So if you're able to be the person who actually gets below the mask, gets them to think about it, that's when you be able to actually get people to take action. And asking questions like, what does it do to you as a person to know you're capable of more, but you're not living up to your potential? If we get to that root problem, I'm telling you, people are going to move forward. Okay. Lastly is the authority transfer. When you sell to identity, you're not just a salesperson, you become a guide. You're the person that can help somebody become who they want to be. Now, that's much more of a powerful position than just trying to get them to buy something. And if you actually step into the authority role and you help shift people, people will fall into your frame and they'll trust you much more. There's this preconceived notion that you're supposed to get people to like you in order to get to sale. It's not true. I've sold tons of people that probably don't meld with me personality-wise, but they viewed me as an authority and they thought I can get them the result. Okay. That lined up with the identity, then they're going to go ahead and move forward. So if you want to see how this actually looks in a live call, what I'm about to do is just break down one of my live calls and I'll break it down step by step on how you actually implement this on a live call that I had. Let's dive into it. So a little bit of context on this call. This is with a young kid who's in sales already, looking to take his skill set up to the next level, make $15,000 per month, but he hasn't taken the action yet. And you can see how I shift his identity in this call. Let's dive into it.
It's like it's kind of like looked down upon. Was 15K.
No, that's good. My spot a couple years back. The skill set, so you could be making $15,000 per month, or what have you actually been doing on that front?
Like I've been watching like your YouTube videos and like that's been really helpful.
Yeah, but besides like the basic YouTube stuff, right? Like what have you done about actually getting like the advanced skills, the hands-on help you would need to get to that $15,000 per month?
Um, honestly, like not a lot, just
Why
because like
not?
it's it's been like a bit expensive. Like everywhere is charging
Yeah.
like two.
Okay. So if you notice, I asked him, hey, what's prevented you from getting help in the past? And what did he give me? He gave me an excuse. It's expensive. So if you just realized before what I said, that's an excuse. That's a story that he's telling himself. So if I accept that story, I can't help him at the highest level and I can't shift his identity. Because if he was the person who he needed to be, he wouldn't look at things expensive. He'd get resourceful in order to get his results. So watch what we do.
3K, like
Uh,
3K, like a
okay.
month. It's
Well,
like,
when you say like
okay, well, I need to save up.
expensive compared to what?
It's like what's compared to my bank accounts?
All right, but is it expensive compared to your goals?
Like 50. Nah, I guess not.
Okay, so can I make a suggestion around that then?
Sure.
Yeah, because like my favorite quote is by Tony Robbins. Again, billionaire life coach, probably one of the most persuasive people out there. And the quote is, "People's biggest superpower is their ability to be resourceful. Right? They
Yeah.
make things happen. Just most people are resourceful on how they can't be resourceful. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what's prevented you in the past, since we've been hopping on offer to offer to offer, from actually getting resourceful so we can get the right skills so we can actually get a stable income?
I feel like it's exactly that because like
Hmm.
I've been hopping from offer to offer, so I don't really have
Yeah.
a stable income to like get super resourceful.
Well,
So
how can you get a stable income if you don't have the skills to make it happen? You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's like once I'm healthy, then I'll go to the hospital. So be real with me, dude. Like I'm in your corner. I want to see you win. What's actually preventing you from going out and getting the help so you can actually have the skills to make a stable income?
I don't know. I guess I just never really like my sales manager on my last role. Like
Yeah.
like on my last like stable role, he
Uh-huh.
kind of got me up to like a point where like I was doing like okay,
Yeah.
just like with the money I was making.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, since then, like I wanted to go for gold, so I transitioned into a couple of different offers that didn't
Yeah.
work out, and
Okay.
then um,
So what's
yeah, I don't know.
prevented you,
Like
man?
I don't know. I just never really thought about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, if we've had this problem for the past few months, not having a stable income, whose responsibility is to go out and actually get the skills to make sure we can get that income?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So what's prevented you, guys? Again, I'm in your corner. I want to. If you notice, he just every single time I'm digging on like, hey, what's actually coming up for him? What's prevented him? He's telling me story after story. Like before, he was just okay being okay, but then he transitioned. He wasn't really looking. Again, these are all excuses. These aren't really beliefs that he's holding on. That's really preventing him from moving forward. So if you notice, all I'm doing is sideswiping and really getting to the heart of the issue, which is the belief that's holding him back, because we still haven't found it yet. See when, like, what's actually coming up for you that's been holding you back?
I don't know. I guess I just like because I'm moving
Mm.
out in like a few months,
Yeah.
so I guess like in those months before, like maybe I was just like comfortable, just like
Okay.
without what else.
Got it. So he's been okay being comfortable. That is a belief, a limitation that is tied to his current self that we need to dig into. And we need to create a gap of who he is right now, being comfortable, to who he needs to be, the person who's always striving for more.
I was making. Like I was making like 6K or so my last couple
Yeah.
rolls. So
Yeah.
like that was kind
No,
of
I get
comfortable.
it.
But like with
So,
like where
so,
I was at.
so where do you feel like that belief comes from? Like being comfortable, even though we're not stable or we're not at our actual goal?
I don't know. Maybe it's just like procrastination of like
Yeah.
I knew I have to do something, but like for me, like oftentimes like, I feel like I just have to like wait till I get like
Right.
into like a shitty situation to do something about it.
Yeah. It could be trouble, dude. Because how long were you in that more comfortable zone?
I'd say for like at least like since I was on the last offer, like five
Mhm.
to 6 months or something.
Okay. In the past 6 months, us being more comfortable, if you had to put a cost to it, Like, how much do you feel like that actually cost you the past 6 months?
Well, if you did your math with the like 2K a week,
We don't got to
we're
do
talking
my math,
similar.
man. We can do your math, right? Like, how much do you feel like it actually cost you?
I'd say at least I probably wouldn't be at those 15K.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm attaching a cost to that way of thinking to drive that wedge even larger, create more of a gap. If you notice something very subtle he did right there is he tried to put it on me that I was doing it. But no, like I want to go based off of his numbers so we can get buy-in and he can admit to himself this is the actual reality of things. If he tries to put it on me, he can still just put some distance between him and the real reality. So I got to sideswipe that. It's like, hey, man, we don't got to use my numbers. Like, what do you think? Put it on him and make sure we get buy in on the real gap there because that's very key.
Months yet, but like at least 10K in total.
Okay. 10K over the past 6 months or like 10K per
Maybe like
month?
just, yeah, 10, like I'd say 6K per month, like extra.
Okay. So like 6,000. So we left $36,000 on the table these past 6 months. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I guess when you put it like that.
You think you could use like 36K right about now?
Yeah, probably look really nice on my checking accounts.
Yeah. So I do have to ask, man, like that way of thinking of being comfortable procrastinating for the past 6 months that we left 36K on the table. Like, is that worth keeping if we're actually going to break out of that comfortability zone and actually get to the point where we're making the type of money we really need to make?
No, because like I can't really like get out of my comfort zone if like I don't like get
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring all this up, because at the end of the day, like I can give you the perfect diet plan in the world, but if you don't actually use it, what type of results you going to get?
Yeah,
So at this point, now I'm transitioning into identity and I'm going to build that identity base gap.
probably not the best.
Right. So it really comes down to yes, you need the right skills, but for you to be that 15,000 per month guy, like I'm telling you right now, like you need to have a different way of walking. Like you have a different level of confidence about you. You get what I mean?
Yeah,
Just right now, we're the guy who doesn't have a stable income and we're jumping from job to job. Is that right?
yeah.
So I have to ask, are you okay being and continuing to be that guy?
No,
Why not?
well, because then like I'll just never have a stable income. And then like come in the next few months when I have to move out,
Yeah.
it's like okay, well shit, how am I gonna move out without a stable income? So
Yeah. But naturally, when we grow and we grow into the person we need to be, we need to let some things die off. So for you to no longer be the person you are right now and grow into the person who you need to be, what do you need to let go of?
probably just like having like just jumping from job to job to job and like being comfortable and
Okay.
like getting comfortable with like being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're going to have to actually take some risk and bet on yourself?
Yeah, like that's kind of like
Why?
you.
Why is that?
Like that's well, cause like if I don't like bet on myself, like who will
Yeah.
type of thing.
But I do have to ask if we continue to be the guy who's comfortable and we keep on jumping from job to job to job, never having that stable income for the rest of your life, like how's that going to feel?
That would fucking suck, dude. Like I can't be one of those reps.
Why not?
Cause like I don't want to be like fucking 40 and then like just looking back and knowing that like I wasted all that time of like
Dude, well, what if you wake up tomorrow or next week and realize you wasted more time?
yeah,
Is that something you're willing to allow to happen?
no.
Okay. So if you saw there, what is the things that I got? I got him to admit that he needs to let go of staying comfortable. He needs to take action and he is not okay continuing to be the person who he has been. So guess what? At the end, it's pretty easy breezy. A little bit of fear in this person in particular, but is able to get him across the line, because I was able to actually speak to the identity level who they are as a person. And I got them to admit the person who they have been is no longer acceptable. And then the person who they need to step into naturally takes action. Hopefully that call was helpful. Took some notes. Okay. So let's focus on how do we actually start to implement this on your calls today? Okay. Because again, I know this is a new concept, or it might be a concept that you've heard me talk about before, but you're thinking, Christian, how do I just slowly start implementing this? Okay. I'll give you a few concrete steps that we can do that you can start adding into your sales calls today that will make a difference. Okay. So first and foremost, let's talk about in our discovery questions when we're getting into somebody's pain. Okay. These are some questions you can start asking right now. Again, don't ask all of them in order. Don't be a robot. Don't be weird, right? Rule number one of sales. But these are some questions that you can start asking today to get to that extra layer deeper and get people to start moving quicker. Okay. So number one, what type of person do you see yourself as right now, right? What story do you tell yourself about why you're not where you want to be? If you had to describe your biggest internal limitation as a person, not business, what would it be? Naturally, as we grow, things have to die off. So, what are some characteristics that you need to let go of as a person to achieve your goals? Now, again, with any of these questions, if you say it like you're hesitant or you're unsure of yourself, you're going to get pushback. Again, don't be weird. Number one rule in sales, don't be weird. Okay. So it's like you say it with confidence. You have to say it with conviction, because when you're asking these questions and you're tapping into somebody's identity, you are leading. You need to be able to lead. In order to lead, you have to have authority and confidence. I'll make a video on that soon. Now, next is how do we really create the identity gap? Here are some questions that we can ask. Do you want to continue to stay the person who has a problem? Why not? What's the cost of staying the person who you are now? If nothing changes about who you are as a person, where do you feel like we'll be in 5 years? What does that do to your confidence to know you're capable of more but not living up to it? Again, these are questions that get to the root issue of them as a person, okay? Future identity visualization, okay? Here's some questions that we can ask. That person making $50,000 a month, how do they think differently than you do now? What type of decisions does that person make that you're not making now? How does that person show up differently in their relationships, their business, their life? Okay. These are all questions that we can get into the deeper issue. And the next one would be, how do we make it to where there's an identity bridge positioning? Okay. This isn't just about business strategies. It's about stepping into the person who we need to be. We're not just going to change what you do. We change how you show up every day to get your outcomes. So these are things, questions, statements that you can start using now. So just add them in. Right? Slowly. Don't use all these different questions or statements. Just slowly add them in. Okay. But the thing is, you have to understand that there's a hard truth that comes with this. Okay. This is something that most people don't want to hear, but if you're going to really lead someone and shift someone's identity, you need to be able to step into the best identity of yourself first. Okay. Most closers show up on calls like they're just trying to make a sale, and they're operating from scarcity and fear, and just basically they need the commissions. They need to hit quota. They're afraid of rejection. But when you're actually shifting someone's identity, you need to make sure like you're operating on a different level, because prospects can feel that. They sense your desperation, your neediness, your fear. They need to be able to actually feel your comfort and your composure. Okay. Because the thing you have to understand with that is there is an identity mirror effect. Okay. People mirror the identity you show up with. If you show up with someone who's desperate for the sale, they'll treat you like it. If you show up with someone who's uncertain about your value, they're uncertain about your value. But if you show up as someone who genuinely believes they can transform lives, someone who operates from abundance, someone who truly cares about their success, that's when they'll mirror that energy back to you. Okay? They'll be more open to you just by how you actually showed up to the call. So my personal identity shift moment, again, I'll never forget when this actually clicked. I was on a call. I was getting every single objection. Think about it, wife, it's too expensive. I'm not sure if this will work. And I had to sit there and I realized something. Like, I'm showing up as somebody who needs a deal. Like, I was operating from scarcity and fear. So right there in the call, and once you're conscious of it, it loses a lot of its power. But I made a conscious decision to actually be somebody different, like shift into a different identity. I became the Christian, the person who genuinely cares about the person's transformation. I stopped needing the sale and started focusing on what's best for them. And just from that, like my tone changed, my questions became more powerful, my presence became more commanding, and the prospect felt that. And within 10 minutes, the objections, it melted away, and they're asking like how to get started. So it wasn't what I was doing, it was how I was showing up. So when we are diving deeper into that, just understand there are 3 identity levels for elite closers. Number 1, we got the salesperson. Okay, this is where 99% of people are. They focus on just making the sale, operating from scarcity need. They're worried about objections, and they're trying to convince and persuade. Okay, you're gonna have a hard time getting elite at sales if this is the level you're looking at. Okay, level 2 is a consultant identity. Now, you're pretty good if this is where you're at, like you're focused on problem solving, operating from knowledge, expertise, confident in your abilities, helping prospects make good decisions. But again, it's still focusing more on logic, some emotion, but we're not getting to the deep rooted issues that we need to. We need to get to level 3, the transformation guide identity. This is where elite closers are. They focus on identity transformation, operating from abundance and certainty, and they're unattached to the outcome. They genuinely care about prospects' highest good. And if you genuinely care about the prospect, you're able to help them at a much higher level. Okay? So here is how I found that really helps me step into that elite identity. Okay? I do what I call the identity check-in. I ask myself a few questions. Who am I showing up on? Who am I showing up as on the call? Am I showing up as someone who needs a sale or someone who genuinely wants to transform the person's life? Am I operating from scarcity or abundance? Do I believe with 100% certainty that with what I'm offering, this will change their life for the better? Am I more committed to the transformation than they are? And if I answer these questions with anything less than what it needs to be, I need to take the moment to make sure I'm stepping into the person who I need to be. Because the abundance paradox is, and this is what most closers can't wrap their head around, the less you need the sale, the more likely it is you're going to get it. When you operate from an identity of somebody who genuinely doesn't need their money, you're only interested in working with people who are ready to step into the identity who they need to be. This is when you'll actually move more people. Okay? And understand that there is going to be a ripple effect. When you master stepping into the person who you need to be, okay, not only do your close rates jump, but you start attracting better prospects because people are going to start treating you differently, start getting more referrals, and you start commanding higher prices. Because when you operate from your best identity consistently, you become that person. And that person naturally attracts success. That's why identity work isn't just about your prospects. It's about you becoming the person who you need to be, who naturally closes elite deals. So not only do you need to help other people step into the identity they need to be, you need to step into the identity you need to be. And a lot of it also comes down to you can't believe the prospects and their stories, but you also can't believe your own stories too. Okay. This one is probably the toughest one that I see people struggle with, but you can't buy into the prospect's limitations. You got to know that they're not real. And the only true way to start to actually understand that is you need to understand that your limitations aren't real either. Because if you try to overcome other people's limitations and stories without overcoming your own, you won't feel it. You can't actually guide someone to do something that you can't do. And the only reason I can have high conviction conversations and I can stay on the call for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours is because I've actually sat and had these conversations with myself and really have to sit and convince myself why every single story somebody has told me is not real. And I don't come from this of a place of like malice. It comes from a place of actually truly caring about people. Because if you sit there and you think that somebody's sob story changes what needs to be done, you're doing them a disservice. Okay? If I'm talking to a single mom who has 2 kids, 3 jobs, if she needs to lose weight, she still needs to eat right and she still needs to work out. Her circumstances don't change what needs to be done. Okay. And this is something that really crystallized in my head because just from like the background that I come from, I should be more of like a statistic than anything. I come from a single mother household, 6 kids, 5 different baby daddies, right? Grew up in a trailer for most of my life. And it was always ingrained in me that my circumstances was never going to dictate the outcomes. And I took solace in knowing that if anybody actually found out about my living situation or the stuff that I had to go through, that they would be shocked. Okay. It has to be the same for other people. You have to give these people the opportunity to feel the same way, that they can overcome these limitations if they become the right person that can overcome these limitations. And if you let them off the hook, you're doing them a disservice and they're just going to stay in their own situation. Okay. So hopefully that hits home. And I highly recommend you take notes on this and drop any questions you have down in the comments. Now, if you want more help actually implementing everything that I went over here, that's why I created my mastermind. Okay. This is where I take good closers and I turn them into elite closers, mastering identity-based selling. Okay. This isn't for everyone. I only work with people who want to become elite, because if you're happy just being average, closing 30%, I don't want to work with you. Period. End of story. I want to work with people who want to close 70 to 90% of the people they're talking to and actually make $40,000 per month. Okay. So in that, you'll get like my entire framework, live call breakdowns, weekly group coaching calls, one-on-ones with me. I break down your calls. It's a lot of very high intense work on becoming the best. And because of that, I can only work with a certain amount of people, believe it or not. Okay. So it's not fake scarcity. It's real scarcity. I don't want a big group. I want to make people elite. So if that's you, go ahead, check out the link in the description. If it's not, hopefully this has been helpful. Leave your biggest comments down below. And again, this document here that goes over everything I went over, again, it's going to be in the description as well. And I'll see you guys for the next video.